Everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of Metabolic Flexibility. Today I want to continue the story about insulin. Fascinating stuff. It has two functions, two major, well probably more than that, but two major functions. And you know about that first function, that excitatory, help get glucose out of the cell, out of the bloodstream into the cells. We know about that, and we also know if we don't have insulin, the glucose won't supposedly get into the cell, and that's not necessarily true. But what's the other impact of glucose or insulin? It's inhibitory. And so what this Schaefer, the Scottish guy who had the hypothetical substance that he knew so much about before it was even discovered, he said it was kind of like, he didn't want to call it a hormone. Hormones were just being named at the time in the early 1900s, and he didn't want to call it a hormone. So he called it an autocoid. At that time, drugs were called autocoids because of their excitatory mechanism on the cells. He also called it a chelone, and that's also something that's inhibitory. And so what's the inhibitory thing? The inhibitory is it inhibits lipolysis, breaking down of fat. Not only that, it inhibits proteolysis, breaking down of protein. It inhibits glucogenolysis, breaking down of glucose. And it inhibits the big word, ketogenesis. So if you're trying to become keto and any insulin spikes, any sugar, any stress, any alcohol, all of a sudden your insulin level rises and your ketone levels fall. It inhibits it. So it does it at the same time on the same receptor of the membrane. So insulin rises, it impacts that receptor site, and it causes glucose to help get into the cell. Help, it accelerates it. It doesn't mean it can't get in there, it accelerates it. And that's the black age of endocrinology. If you don't have insulin, it's not going to get there at all. It's not true. What really happens also, though, is that it puts the brakes. It says no fat utilization. And why? Because we all know this story because of starvation and because of famine and because of storing and being able to use that healthy fat or that stored fat for another day, another time, another place. But that's going to be a real big story. And I want to tell you something from this study that we talked about from the British Journal of Anesthesiology. And this is what we're going to talk about right here. It says, the consequence of that error, of the error of thinking that because we have high blood sugar in the blood is because insulin is not enhancing the glucose out of the bloodstream into the cells. Because we've made that error of thinking, that's why our glucose levels are rising. So that's what it's saying. The consequence of this error, which is a fallacious error, concept of insulin being required for glucose entry into the cells rather than just accelerating the glucose uptake. So it accelerates it, but it's not 100% mandatory. And I want you to learn why that's so important to becoming metabolically flexible. The hyperglycemia of diabetes was then interpreted as, damn you glucose, that's what it says here, damming back of glucose into the bloodstream as a consequence of lack of insulin. This became established teaching, and although the concept was shown to be erroneous in the mid-1970s, the teachings have not changed, and consequently, therapy has been based on flawed concepts. What has therapy done? Insulin has been manufactured by drug companies, let's say, and now it says, yeah, for diabetes, the problem with insulin is that it's not getting glucose into the cell, so let's make insulin. But the real problem is it's stopping the lipolysis and helping fat being utilized, and it's thereby making you metabolically inflexible. Stay tuned to the next lesson.